Welcome to Zodiac Exclusive. My name is John Paul Kayuni. Today I'll be talking to Dr. Jessica Thompson. She is an archaeologist from the United States of America. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so as an archaeologist, what drives your instincts to move in a particular direction? You have been in the region for some time now.
I think for me, it's about the stories that we can tell, and it's the ability to use scientific methods to tell stories that are human-based. I think there's a lot of value in storytelling. It's a way that people can communicate with the future through documentation and recording, and I think it's also a way for us to connect with our ancestors.
Okay. And now you went to the Hora mountain. What specifically took you there? What is it that you were so much interested?
So I can say in 2005 I came to Malawi as a tourist. And what took me to Malawi after that was the people. I was so impressed with how friendly people were, but also the landscape was very different from any other landscape I'd seen. And I wondered, how did that affect the people who were living here in the past? I had a project in Karanga district from 2009 to 2016. By and by, I started to become interested in some sites that I had read about in the Hora area. And I thought that would be an ideal place to start a second project. So it was based on those old research that I was able to think about that might be an interesting area, but I never expected to find some of the things that we found there.
Now, this project, if I'm getting you correctly, began in 2005 when you came here, but the actual implementation in 2017, between 2017 and 2019.
Yep.
Just to appreciate what goes into preparing for such projects, the excavations and all that.
What we were expecting to find was not so much what we ended up finding. We were expecting to find a whole lot of very old rubbish.
Okay.
So these archaeological sites are places where people lived. And wherever people live, they do throw away things. And from your rubbish, you can reconstruct what you were eating. Even sometimes people will lose pieces of jewelry. You know, in those days, people wore beads made out of shells, so you can find those. We were expecting to find the tools that people were using. They made them from stone. And what we didn't realize was that the places people were living were also places where people were performing some ceremonies. And that's what we ended up finding that was really exciting. So I guess when I was preparing to do the research, I was more prepared to recover thousands and thousands of old trash, pieces of trash. And we did. Snail shells, bones, discarded pieces of stone. But we also found this discovery among other exciting discoveries.
Okay. Now, what's the story of the find in Hora?
Yeah.
What new knowledge is it bringing? And over 9,000 years, you say?
It seems to be. It's, you know, that's what the science would tell us. People have different ways of thinking about how they think of time. But from a scientific perspective, it seems to be 9,500 years ago, there was a woman who lived in that area around Hora Mountain. And for some reason, when she passed away, the community created a big, big fire, and they put her in it. And we find the remains of some burned bones, but we also find the ash, the bed of ash. That's the exact location where this event happened. And it must have been an enormous event with the entire community witnessing, because the fire was much bigger than you would actually need in order to perform that ceremony. It was a spectacle.
Okay, some sort of cremation.
It seems to be. And an open air cremation is not like what people think when they think of a cremation. They think of, you know, a furnace, something like that. They can reach temperatures that are very high in a small area. But when all you have is a campfire or a bonfire, the fire has to be bigger in order to get that hot. And that means that there's a lot more fuel that's required, a lot more firewood, and a lot more community investment. So it's a whole different kind of approach. I used to think that when you cremate somebody, maybe it's like an easy way of disposing of the remains. But in fact, it turns out that in these circumstances, it was the hard way. People were choosing the hard way for some reason for this woman.
Okay. What was particularly striking about the project in Malawi, if you compare it to your other projects in Zambia, for instance, and elsewhere?
Yeah, the project in Zambia is just starting, and so I can't give away any results there. I've just come back from the field. But I can definitely say that I've worked in Ethiopia, South Africa, I've worked in Tanzania, and the projects in Malawi are exciting because it just seems like everything you find here adds something new to the record. You know, it's not a place where there's been a lot of archaeological research. Each and every discovery tells us something important. It's not just adding to what is already known. It's something new each and every time.
Now, today, people in Malawi, Zambia, parts of Tanzania, Mozambique share traditional and cultural traits. Does this reflect, give a picture of how people in the past used to live as well?
That's a really good question. I think that's a question that's worth exploring. And again, I would encourage there to be more research in Malawi because I think there's a lot of answered questions and unanswered questions.
Okay.
And that one is one of the unanswered ones because we know that before there were the Chewas, for example, before there were Tumbukas, before anybody was here with agriculture, with pottery, and with ironworking, there were the Batwa, there were the Akafula. There were these people, they're known as short people, they lived here, they're known in oral history. But how those groups connected to each other is very poorly understood. There's some oral history that would suggest they were fighting. So in fact, we can talk to modern day people to get some of that oral history, but it's disappearing fast. And if people don't document it and speak with their elders now, I'm afraid in even one generation we'll lose that. The other thing is that sometimes you can find that there's been some cultural transmission. So maybe, for example, this tradition of wearing bark cloth, that could be something that was shared by both groups. And maybe there's a way to talk to some living people, learn about those methods of clothing production, traditional methods, and then we can even understand what happened in the past. So I think more research would be very exciting.
Are they not the same people, maybe? Those that lived around these countries?
That's another good question. So before we found the cremation, there were other skeletons that were found at the same site, recovered in 1950 by this archaeologist named J. Desmond Clark. He was based in Zambia at the Livingstone Museum, and he did a lot of research in Zambia and also in Malawi. So he was the first to do an excavation at Hora Mountain.
Okay.
Should be 1950, and he found 2 adult human skeletons.
Okay.
In 2017, when we started the project, we were able to take a small sample of bone from those skeletons and try to get some ancient DNA. And nobody believed that you could recover ancient DNA that was that old from the tropical areas. So that was a breakthrough. It was a very important finding, and it was already from Hora Mountain. Then what we found is if you compare the DNA from those people, and they are short people, you can actually look at the skeletons and you can know something. Man, woman, they were short, they were strong. And those people don't seem to be related to the majority of people who live in Malawi today. But I can say that the sample is very small. So just because you have one person here and one person here doesn't mean you're telling the whole story. And it would be exciting to get more research on that area.
That's quite interesting, and it takes me to another question. How just do you establish the age of the fossils?
Yeah, that one was kind of tricky because in the tropics, you have things degrade quickly. You know, with the heat and with the moisture, they don't preserve very well. That's true for the organic part of a human body. And when you look at the bones, you can use a technique called radiocarbon dating to try to assess how long ago that person died. But sometimes it's a challenge because you can lose some of that organic material over time, and you're left with very little that you are able to establish the age. So you can use other methods. For example, you might be able to use radiocarbon dating on some charcoals that are found in the same place as the human remains. And you say, okay, if this skeleton is here and this charcoal is here, I can't date the skeleton, but I can date the charcoal. And you can make an association. I think that's a really important point because one of the things people don't understand about archaeology is it's not always about the objects. It's
Okay.
about the context of the objects. So if that charcoal is removed or that skeleton is removed, you can't even date it anymore.
Okay.
So it's
Okay.
very, very important that these sites remain intact until they are investigated by a professional. And then when the professionals do it, something we always try to do is leave most of the site there. We don't just remove everything. Otherwise, what's left for the future?
Now that also brings a problem in terms of the confidence or trusting the dates that may be established.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I can explain the process a little bit. So it's like there's different types of chemicals that are in the air all around us. And each and every living thing is breathing. Even the trees and the grass, they breathe in their own way. So they exchange air with whatever is the air. So the composition in their bodies will be the same as the composition in the air in terms of chemistry.
Okay.
Then when they pass away or they stop exchanging that when they die, then at that point they're no longer maintaining the same ratio. So what's in the body starts to decay while what's outside starts to just continue as it was. That means it's like a clock. It's like a clock that you can measure how much decay has happened inside that skeleton since the time when that person stopped breathing. And that's the moment that you're actually dating. When it comes to charcoals, you're dating the moment that it was lit on fire. So each and every object has kind of a timeline or a clock inside of it. And if you have a sensitive instrument, you can just basically measure the chemistry to activate that clock.
Okay, so it depends on the instrument that you're using at that particular time.
The instruments, radiocarbon dating instruments, are able to date things that go all the way back to about 50,000 years ago. Beyond that, you would have to use a different method, and I could go on about that, but we don't have to because
we are going to
we never found that.
Okay, so your team collaborated with the Malawi Department of Museums and Monuments.
Yes.
How important was that partnership in the project?
Oh, it was crucial. Absolutely crucial. Every time we do field work, we have people there from the department, and they also come to check on us when we're in the process of doing our work. They're also really, really important for community liaison.
Okay.
Because they even have an education and outreach branch.
Okay.
So they have research, they have education and outreach, and they have conservation. We tried to have the research people as part of our team. They're doing the work alongside of us, but we also had an education and outreach officer, and he would move from community to community, speaking to people in the villages. Here's what's going on. We had some flyers, informational flyers, trying to answer questions, because as soon as there's a big research project, everybody is curious. What's going on?
Yes.
Why are they digging?
Yeah, I can imagine the interest, the questions that people had in that area. And then just to ask, what was the contribution of a Malawian on the ground and the authorities maybe on the other side in terms of assisting with all that, answering the questions from the people, giving guidance, other than just the permission that the project should take off?
Well, they were there together with us, and then afterwards when we were analyzing the cremation, I mean, another misconception about cremation is that it's just ash, but actually there are many bone fragments that are remaining behind, sometimes even large pieces. And what happens in a professional modern cremation is then there's a pulverizer that crushes them. So when they present to the family, they look like ash, but they were not originally just ash, they were bones. So I think I saw that was a misconception because people who don't see the process, they don't know. Why are there bones here when it's supposed to be just ash? That's the reason. But they are very fragmented bones. So in order to understand, is this bone part of the same person as this other bone? Or could we be dealing with multiple people burned in the same pyre? We had to put them together like a puzzle. We had to refit those fragments together. So after we recovered the skeleton, we also worked with Museums and Monuments here in Lilongwe with one of their officers was one of the authors on the paper because he was instrumental in refitting those fragments together. He was using that expertise. So we worked with them in the field during recovery. We worked with them after the field during the analysis, and they're even co-authors on the paper. So I would say the role is extremely important.
Okay, so the archaeological excavations at Hora should cost a fortune. Big fortune.
Yeah.
Okay, what did the work on Hora Mountain cost?
Yes, that's a good
maybe
question.
What are these costs about?
Yeah. So I like to say that archaeology is a bargain.
Okay.
Because archaeologists are used to doing a lot of research on what is a very small budget. We eat the same food each and every day, and we don't eat meat
Okay.
in the field. We can't afford it.
Okay.
We do employ a lot of local people, and we stay in tents, right?
Okay.
And so, we're drinking water from the borehole. We have some solar panels that we use so we don't have electricity costs. We're always trying to keep the living costs down. Some costs you can't move. Fuel, it costs money to move here and there.
Yes.
And as we know, fuel is
Yes.
always always a big cost. We, of course, have to cost their airfares for people who come from international places. The way that works is students who are coming from overseas.
Okay.
There have been many students coming, but they pay their own way. So the project doesn't cover any of their airfares.
Okay.
The airfares is only covered for like maybe 2 people,
Okay.
the head researchers. They're the ones who have to find the funding.
Okay.
Then I can say that, of course, there are costs because we are involved with government. There should be permit costs.
Exactly.
There will be definitely allowances. And there will be some costs in terms of the analysis after the project is finished. But the in-field costs in total, it depends on how many vehicles, how many participants. But year by year, it should be, I don't know if you want a number, it should be about 35,000 US dollars for approximately 8 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm telling you, it's a bargain. If you divide 60 community members plus all of the research team plus the students, and you divide 30,000 by that many people, it's actually very low day-by-day cost.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you encounter any challenges maybe in trying to go into to that place, that site, for your project?
Yeah.
That you'd love to share?
I have felt very welcome in Mzimba, and I definitely can say that I never encountered any challenges with the community there.
Okay.
I felt that immediately we were guided as to who we should visit, who we should see. We informed the paramount of the activity. He approved in advance. We informed, when we showed up, we informed the DC, we informed the Nkosis, and then the local Nkasanes, the GBHs. We really tried to make an effort to ensure that nobody was taken by surprise. And I think that helped a lot, and we had good guidance in that area. So I've become personal friends with many of the people who live in that area, and I really even appreciated the chance to get to know them.
Okay. How does this discovery change or add to our understanding of Malawi's place, understanding of Malawi's place in broader archaeological history in Africa?
Yeah, it's a big discovery. It's the oldest cremation in Africa, by far.
All
The
right.
next oldest is about 3,000 years old, 3,500 years old. This is 9,500 years old.
Yeah.
And it's a different group of people. It's with the Batwa. So it's like, that was not expected. We knew that they had some mortuary customs, but they were doing something different here. Even that same site, there were regular human burials, those found in 1950. And then there was this. So it's like, what was it about this person, this individual, that really made them, the community, apply that treatment, that mortuary treatment? We can imagine anything we want to imagine, and we'll never know the real answer. But what it does is it sparks the imagination, and it makes people wonder about the diversity of ways people used to live in the past. And it also shows that Malawi has a lot to offer on the global scene. Because not only is this the oldest cremation in Africa, it is the oldest cremation pyre of an adult human in the entire world.
Okay.
So it's definitely the case that Malawi is on the map globally.
Yeah, now I see where this one is coming from, because you're talking of over 900 or 9,000 years.
Yeah.
And this has never happened anywhere.
Well, it's there is a small pyre that is from the United States in Alaska that seems to be a little bit older, but that's for something like an infant, a small child.
Okay.
It's not like this big spectacle
Okay.
like we see here. So in that case, yeah, there's nothing else in the world like it.
Do you believe Malawi's archaeological heritage has sufficiently been researched
Oh
and,
no,
and documented?
no.
Given your experience, of course.
Yeah, you can walk. I mean, even a small part of the country, you can walk into a new place and find something. And even if you talk to people, they'll say, "Oh, I saw some pottery there. Oh, I saw some bones there." You know, when they realize what stone tools are, those are everywhere. And yet, when you look in the academic literature and when you look in the media, you don't really see Malawi mentioned that often. And I think that the potential here is enormous. And it would just be wonderful if there would be many, many projects, all different parts of Malawi, led by Malawian scholars and Malawian researchers. And, you know, then I would be something like maybe a support, or I would just be watching and learning from the sidelines.
Okay.
That's my hope.
Are there still questions that you feel remain unanswered about Hora or Malawi in general?
Definitely. You mentioned I was in Zambia doing some field work.
Yes.
So it's kind of like, now that we have established not just this cremation, but the majority of our work is about the more boring parts of the record, you might think. But I don't think they're boring. I think they're very interesting. For example, we find that in the Hora area, there was some environmental change. So going beyond 9,500, there are even some radiocarbon dates from other sites there, going back to 37,000.
Yes.
So that means that all of that human history is documented and recorded in the Hora area. It's not just stopping at 9,500. And what we can do is we can start to make some comparisons. How did people in this area live compared to people in, say, ancient Dedza, in Chongoni Rock Art area, for example? How did they compare to people who were living in Zikachitika on the Zambian side? Because it was all one region. And here where we find this ancient rock art, we know that these were, we can call them storied landscapes. They were places where the landscape itself is telling a story about human movement, human interaction, human innovation, and environmental change. So we find a lot of fossils, even animals that don't live here anymore. We find their fossils.
Okay.
So
Quite interesting.
There's so much left to go.
Okay. Now you mentioned about academic value or academics. Beyond academic value, what other benefits would such research bring to Malawi for education, museum, tourism, cultural preservation, or local communities around Hora, the archaeological site where your project took place?
When you do archaeology, you always have to think, am I doing this for myself, or am I doing this in a way that can also, you know, is it just for my own personal interest, or how can I benefit others? And I've kind of struggled with that at first when I was younger, because I was thinking, it's mostly just for learning purposes. But I think I'm going to revise now.
Okay.
I think we have this issue coming from the outside and viewing a lot of parts of Africa. The stories that are told about African countries in the United States are not usually about the cultural aspects. They're often more about development aspects, economic aspects, things like that. And I think that what humans do that make us different from other animals is we have culture. And we need to celebrate culture. And we need to uplift it and make sure that the world knows how rich the cultural record is in this part of the world. And I think archaeology has a lot to contribute to that. So in a way, you can kind of think of it as having the same kind of cultural significance as art, for example, or media. You know, it's kind of a way for us to leave something behind for the future. Each and every human being is eventually going to pass away. We know this.
Yes.
So what can we put in place now that makes us more than just surviving, you know, for the future? We have to have some kind of legacy to pass on. I think that's the role of the archaeologist in many ways. And that touches on education, and it can touch also on tourism, as you mentioned. Because people are interested in these issues. And I teach at Yale University. I teach a lot of classes where there's a lot of news about these kinds of discoveries, and people want to know. And I think there's something there that can attract people in. I think about the landscape in Karanga, as well, where I did my first project. You have the lake, you have paleontological sites, you have archaeological sites. They're just close by. That's a perfect opportunity for tourism if tourists can get there. You know, if they can fly to the airport maybe. Because one of the biggest obstacles is, you know, how long does it take to get from here to there? But if there's a little bit of capacity put in the right places, I think it could really, it could be something that takes off. Around the Hora area, there's already a huge amount of international tourism because of the Umteto festival.
Umteto, yeah, festival, yes.
And it's a culturally significant area for other reasons too. So when you think about that cultural significance going back all the way to 37,000, you know, I think there's a lot of potential there. One more point I want to make, which is that thinking of the evidence we have for environmental change, that can actually be used to inform sustainability initiatives.
Yes.
So it's kind of like, how quickly did this landscape erode? What did it used to look like? What kinds of animals and plants used to be here? And, you know, can we actually trace what's happening now in terms of agriculture, disasters, and so on that can make this environment more sustainable for the future? So I think looking back in time can help us to look forward.
Your initiative on helping Malawi build a museum, where are you with that? Any costs that you're looking for?
Well, it's not really my initiative.
Okay.
It's more just, I want to help. And Malawi is the only country in Africa that doesn't have a national museum in the capital.
Yes.
It has a number of smaller museums, but in terms of where to put the materials afterwards, that's a big issue, because every single object that I have ever studied from Malawi gets returned to Malawi. If I have to export it for some specialized analysis, it comes back.
Comes back, yes.
So where does it go? And that's an issue. Without a museum that has reliable storage, with secure storage, with boxes to put things, where I have been able to contribute is as a curator at the Yale Peabody Museum. I know something about exhibits, I know about curation, I know about what kind of needs to be done in a museum. And we just underwent a big renovation. So I can help in an advising capacity. I also hope I can help in sort of a fundraising capacity if people are interested in these stories.
Yes.
And here's where the media is important.
Yes.
We need to get the story out so people can point to that and say, we have to save that. We have to find a place to put these objects.
Yes, because otherwise now when they come, they just get thrown away.
Yeah.
And we're losing.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think everybody loses when that happens.
Yeah.
So we're beyond a world where you just keep things overseas, but that means that there needs to be capacity locally. So that's my hope. And yeah, I think that it's possible that in working with Department of Museums and Monuments, and especially getting the word out about how important this is or could be, I think it can help.
Okay. Now this may sound obvious, but I have to ask, are you planning, do you have any plans returning to Malawi for any other archaeological projects?
I have ideas, but I have no concrete plans.
Okay.
I say that because there's still work to be done in the Hora area, for sure. And then there's a site that's very interesting in the Chongoni area that I would love to someday do some research there.
So there are already sites that you are interested in?
Definitely. The issue is that you have to have a targeted question.
Okay.
When you're raising funding in a research capacity, you can't just say, I need to see what's there. You have to say, I expect that we'll find these things, and it's important to find these things because we need to know this other thing. So as of now, I'm tied up with my project in Zambia, and it would be too challenging, I think, to operate in two places at the same time. But I would love to return back in a research capacity. And I'm still analyzing materials from here because that goes on for a long time.
Okay. Now, having done all that, what could you say? Could humans have first lived in this part of the world?
I think it's possible. For, if I can even throw out an even bigger number than 9.5, 2.4 million. There is a fossil from Karanga that is one of the oldest fossils in the world of Homo, right? So we talk of Homo sapiens, that's us. So there, if you go back in time long enough, you have other versions of Homo. And there is one that's been found there in Karanga. So I suspect that this was a very important part of the world. And this is partly why I'm doing this regional view, Malawi, Zambia, because I think this area, these Miombo forests, were really important when you go all the way back millions of years. And then again and again and again, you find that this is a meeting place. This is a crossroads. This is where animals were exchanging and moving. Humans were exchanging and moving,
Yes.
culturally, biologically. So I think this is a really important part of Africa, and I like to think of it as the beating heart of Africa. Not just the warm heart, but
Okay.
the beating heart. It's pumping all of these different populations in and out over many millions of years.
Now, one science school of thought believed that humans evolved from apes. Do you share those thoughts?
That is the scientific view, and I am a scientist. So when I look at the evidence for that, I do feel convinced by it, what I see. And the evidence that I see is, I've been to most of these fossil sites that you speak of, the ones in South Africa, Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania. I've worked at many of these sites. I've seen the fossils coming from the ground. And I can see the similarities some of them have between, they look a bit like human and a bit like an ape. There is something in between. So for that reason, I feel confident that this is not some kind of hoax. But I also feel like there's a lot more to discover in terms of the details. So anything is possible in terms of where those important processes might have taken place. And it could have been right here in Malawi.
Other than being a scientist, have you taken particular interest personally to authenticate such thoughts?
Authenticating them beyond simply seeing them being excavated or viewing them?
Yeah, just using the scientific methods to authenticate, to say, okay, let me just find out a little bit more to establish if indeed humans evolved from apes.
So one thing that we can do, and I say we broadly as in terms of the scientific community, is we can now start to extract ancient proteins from very old fossils. Ancient DNA is a problem in the tropics, I've already mentioned. So at Hora Mountain, some of those older individuals, there's 9.5, but there are even older individuals going back even to 14,000 that have some ancient DNA. But by then, it's very degraded and it's very fragmentary. So to be able to trace biologically, this is authentically belonging to a human being. You can do it, but you can't do it for millions of years. It just doesn't preserve that long. But we're finding that proteins do. And proteins are parts of the body that are a bit more of a robust molecule than DNA. So these protein sequences are able to match up between some of the sequences that we see in living apes and living humans. So I find that that is compelling evidence to add to what we know. This is like you can look at the shape of the fossil, but you can also now look at even the preserved biological molecules in some cases. So I feel pretty convinced by that.
Now, these projects that you're undertaking, are they part of your work as professor at Yale University, or
yes.
or maybe how are you splitting the time between the projects and your work?
No, my mandate is to do research. So I have to do. I'm supposed to split 40 research, 40 teaching, 40%, 40%, and the rest is supposed to be service. So committee service, reviewing papers, peer reviews, professional service, that kind of thing. So yeah, I would say it's supposed to be a large part of what I do. It is often the case that it shrinks a bit because, you know, these bureaucratic things, they do take over. But at least when I'm doing field work, I can focus completely.
Where else, apart from Africa, do you focus much on doing your research?
Not these days. I used to do some work in the United States. I've worked in Spain, Croatia, but mostly Africa. You know, my project is now Zambia, but still ongoing, the analysis from Malawi and Ethiopia.
And from all that, you've traveled quite a lot. From all that, what similarities do you see or differences do you see in terms of how humans lived in this part of Africa and those the North Pole and all that?
Yeah, they made different kinds of objects out of different things. So
Okay.
I think one of the biggest differences we see is that when you get up into the European time periods that have similar time periods. So let's say 30,000 years ago in Europe versus 30,000 years ago
Yes.
here versus 30,000 years ago in South Africa. The differences you would see is in Europe, they would be making ornaments and things out of bones.
Okay.
So because there they make them mostly out of antlers. So they have these deer, and the antler is something that is like a horn, but it's not quite the same because they shed it every year. It's a soft material, so they really carved those things. You don't find them here because you don't find those animals.
Yes.
So I think when you try to make comparisons, it can be very challenging because people are using the materials that are available to them.
At that time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And then when you look in South Africa, people were making ornaments, necklaces out of these marine shell beads.
Okay.
Yeah, so they would like string them up, and you can see the little holes drilled in them. Here we are in the middle of the continent. We don't have the marine shells. So, people will use things that are available locally. One of my favorite stories about this from the local record. So, those giant snails, those huge snails like this? People used to eat those
Yes.
in the past. You can even find the evidence because they have the hole here and the hole here.
That
But-
something was taken out
Yeah,
of this.
yeah, that's the way to do it. You have to stab it and then you
Yeah.
open it. But we find that when the environment was a bit drier in the past, there were ostriches living here. These big birds, because we find their eggs. We actually find fragments of their eggshells at the same sites in Hora.
Okay.
So this is not an animal that lives anywhere anymore in this area. It doesn't like these closed miombos. But in the past, we find them, which means it must have been a more open
Yeah.
environment. Then over time, they would make beads from these eggshells. Over time, they switch and they start to make their beads from these large land snails. So again, they're using something that there's no more ostrich there because of environmental change. So they change the culture and they adapt. So I like those stories because they really show what people are thinking and adapting to in the past.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining me in the program today.
Yep, no problem. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. And that's how we conclude the program today, Zodiac exclusive. I was talking to an archaeologist, Dr. Jessica Thompson from the United States of America. Till we meet again next time, my name is John Paul Kayuni. Goodbye for now.